Principle 7. Identify reinforcers that are effective for the child with ASD. Would you faithfully go to work every day if you did not receive a paycheck at some point? Your paycheck is your payoff. Much of what we do in everyday life is driven by reinforcement, the payoff. What is reinforcement? Reinforcement is anything that increases a behavior. There are two types of reinforcement, positive and negative, and yes, both of these do increase behavior. We will spend this time talking about positive reinforcement as it is one of the most effective tools that you can use in your classroom or home. Positive reinforcement is something that you like or enjoy, and when the behavior is followed by something you enjoy, you're likely to repeat the behavior. Many people feel that children learn through these principles of reinforcement. Positive reinforcement can be divided into two categories, primary and secondary. Primary reinforcement is considered to fulfill a basic biological need. Examples include food and sleep. Secondary reinforcements include social praise, engaging in preferred activities, or receiving a token or tangible item. Don't assume that you know what a child with ASD likes. It is important to ask a child, observe a child, or perform a preference assessment. When asking a child about reinforcers, remember that multiple reinforcement inventories can be found on the internet. You can also simply sit down with a child and ask them questions like, what do you like to do after school? Or, what's your favorite food? Or, what toys do you like to play with? When observing a child, set up a controlled environment to include 3 distinct areas: food, toys, and sensory. Then allow the child somewhat free access to this environment. Watch and record the area that the child goes to first. Record the specific items from this area that the child chooses. These items should be considered highly reinforcing for the child. Continue this process until you have identified 3 to 5 items. Remember that simply looking at an item does not make it reinforcing, but actually playing with it or eating it would. It's equally important to think outside of the box when selecting reinforcements. Not every child wants an M&M or a goldfish cracker. For instance, I once had a child who loved to run his hands through my hair. A perfect reinforcement for him was a fake hair attachment that was purchased at a mall kiosk. Would you have ever thought that a ball of hair could serve as a reinforcement? I certainly didn't. For some children, it may be necessary to perform a preference assessment to determine what items are reinforcing. A preference assessment consists of gathering multiple items in the categories of food, toys, and sensory. To begin the assessment, select up to 3 items and place them on a table in front of the child. Be sure to leave a fair amount of distance between the items so that there's a clear indication of the item the child is seeking. The child may reach for the item or even gaze at the item. Both of these should be considered attempts at least accessing that item. Once the child has reached for an item, allow him to play with the toy or to consume the food. Then lay the items back out in a different order and repeat this process. Once the child has chosen an item 2 or 3 times, that item can be considered a highly desirable item and it can be removed from the process. Continue the preference assessment until you've identified 3 to 5 items. It will be necessary to identify reinforcers for a child multiple times throughout the year. Remember, if we learn from reinforcement, then we had better find out what's reinforcing to the child that we teach and care for.